Welcome back. I am a co-host, Samantha Farlow with the Garrison Public Affairs Office.
And I am Sergeant Brianna with the 1st Cavalry Division Band.
And I'm Specialist Kyra Pearl with the 11th Corps Signal Brigade.
And this is Fort Hood's Great Big Podcast.
Let your voice be heard at BOSS.
What's BOSS?
BOSS stands for Better Opportunities for Single Soldiers and serves the single service member community, active, guard, and reserve, as well as single parents, geographical bachelors, all U.S. military service branches, and foreign service members assigned to the installation. The BOSS program is based on quality of life, community service, and recreation and leisure. As a member of BOSS, have a voice in how you live, how you spend your leisure time, and how you support the community around you. BOSS membership and the program's available leadership and project management roles also will enhance your promotion package. For more information about how you can become a BOSS member, visit our website at hood.armymwr.com.
Welcome back. We have with us two very special guests. Please go ahead and introduce yourselves.
Hi, my name is Jannan Melendez. I am one of the Suicide Prevention Program Managers here at Fort Hood.
And I'm Kenya King, and I'm also a Suicide Prevention Program Manager on the installation as well.
Well, thank you guys so much for being on the podcast with us today.
Yes, it's good to see y'all again.
Yeah.
There is.
Yeah, so September is a very important month for you guys. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
So September for us is Suicide Prevention and Awareness Month. And so we take this time each year to highlight the importance of suicide prevention within the military community and the community as a whole. Typically, suicide prevention is something that people may think of it as a check the block kind of thing, or something that needs to be done sporadically or maybe once a year. And so we just want to highlight the importance of integrating suicide prevention into, training and our everyday lives, because people around us are suffering. And I think when we can think about the things that we can do better, it's definitely identifying those individuals that need help and doing a better job at being there for ourselves and for others.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So with all of that, you guys, obviously we talk a lot about what those steps are, what we can do to be there for people. Do you guys kind of want to go through that a little bit as well?
Yeah, so, one of the first things that we can always try to do is just to be there for that individual the best way that you can. We're not asking an individual to be a counselor or a psychologist or anything. It's just really showing that individual enough time and effort to really sit and listen.
Right.
So maybe what someone else is going through. So we know that the Army has a lot of acronyms. And
Yes.
of course, we like the acronym that they use for helping an individual that may have thoughts of suicide is ACE, A-C-E. And so the first thing that we ask for people to do is to be on the lookout for risk factors and warning signs associated with suicide. And if you see something that is not like that person should be acting, they're not doing some things that they would normally do, then maybe you get the courage enough to ask that person if they are having thoughts of suicide. And we encourage individuals to say it very clearly, very directly, and use some form of death. Are you thinking about suicide? Are you thinking about taking your life? Which is very different from, are you thinking about hurting yourself?
Right.
Hurting yourself can have a lot of different meanings. So when you do that, maybe that takes the tension off of that person. Maybe they didn't want to bring it up, but because you did, they may feel more comfortable in answering that question and even having the conversation. And then moving on to the next step, we ask those individuals to care. How do you care for that individual? The best thing that you can do is listen. You have 2 ears and 1 mouth, and so we believe that God kind of believed that, hey, you should do more listening than you do talking. And when a person who is having thoughts of suicide, maybe they've never had anyone listen to them before. And you may be the first person that took the time out to say, hey, what's going on? Are you thinking about suicide? Tell me what got you to this point. And just listen to what that person has to say, because helping that person to speak, get things off of their chest, it produces relief. It causes comfort for individuals. And then the last thing we want individuals to do is be able to escort that person somewhere where they can get the help that they need, whether that may be to a counselor, a chaplain, any other medical professional, even if it's calling 911 or taking them to the ER. You never want to leave that person alone. Stay with them, and then just get them to that next level of care to help ensure, hopefully, that they choose life over death.
Yeah. I know in this day and age, it's hard for people to be that direct and to ask those hard questions. What would you say to those people that, they kind of want to avoid the confrontation, or they're a little worried if asking them will encourage them like to go out, act through with these thoughts? What would you say to them?
I would say just go ahead and have the conversation. One of the biggest myths that we try to put aside when it comes to suicide prevention is that if you ask that question, that you actually put that thought in the person's head. Mm-hmm. And in reality, you didn't ask that question for no reason. Right. That person said something, did something, they showed you something that was not normal. And because of that, you asked that question. And so in asking that question in that manner, it may produce relief for that person to say, I didn't want to bring it up, but because you did, now we can go forth. And maybe you're able to give that person the help that you need. And if you're not that person who you think can't help, then ask the question and then maybe take that person to someone else. You don't have to feel like the weight is on your shoulders to help a person save their life. We're all here. We're all connected. And we need to realize that we need to connect ourselves to resources so that we don't have to do all the work ourselves. It's a relay race. You do your part, you hand it off, and you let someone else do their part in helping that individual save their life.
Mm. And just asking the question doesn't mean that someone is going to say yes, right?
Yeah.
So asking the question clearly and directly, are you thinking about suicide, right? That's a closed-ended question. So there's a yes and there's a no. The answer is not always going to be yes. Mm-hmm. However, if the answer is no, you're communicating a lot to that person, right? So first and foremost, you're very concerned about that person because you care about him or her, right? And secondly, you're unafraid to go there with that person, to be there for them in what may be their darkest moment, because that's showing that regardless of what the answer is, I want to know, one, if you're okay, and if not, I care about you, so I want to make sure that you're okay, right? Yeah. And so if that person says no, that lets him or her know that, so if suicide is not on the table right now, that's fine, right? But if that person continues to struggle with something, or if something else surfaces and that person does think about suicide, they then know that you are an ally and you're a person that they can turn back to and share that with, right? Because you're non-judgmental. It doesn't matter what they're going to say. You're invested in them and you want to know how they're doing. And if not, you want to know how you can be supportive in that moment.
Yeah, that's really nice. How, when it comes to the larger community, specifically here at Fort Hood, what does having this discussion really mean for the community, and what can we do as a whole?
I think the first thing that we all need to do is have the discussion. Yeah. Suicide is one of those topics that's considered taboo. Right. People feel uncomfortable with it, and therefore they don't really know how to have that conversation. Mm-hmm. And we say this in all of our trainings. If we have a problem, which we do with suicide, if we don't talk about it, then how do we solve the problem? Yeah. We have to be able to bring it to the forefront to say, this is the issue that we're having. Let's see how you feel about it. Let's see how another person feels about it. And what it all really boils down to, we're not trying to say anything is right or wrong, but we can say we understand. Can you understand how a person is feeling that may get them to that point where they want to take their life? And if you can understand it not from just your viewpoint, but from the viewpoint of that individual, what they see, what they're going through, then that begins the framework, if you will, the foundation to say, we need to continue this and go further with it. And people doing that within the community for themselves first, reaching out to their family, start looking out at their coworkers, their loved ones, the organizations that they belong to. Then it becomes a community effort, so someone doesn't have to feel that everything is on them. It is completely a community effort to make what we call a suicide safer community.
I would also like to pose a rhetorical question, right? So we know that suicide is an issue. It's one of those things that the Army mandates that we take training on, and we know the statistics around, suicide, the 800,000 people that are dying globally directly because of suicide. Just ask yourself, why aren't you asking the question? So we all know someone who has had relationship problems. We all know someone who's had some financial difficulties. We all know someone who's maybe struggled with a transition or two, right?
Yeah.
And so all of those things increase the risk for suicide. And when you're talking about the normal stressors of day-to-day life, adding those components makes things worse.
Yeah.
So in those moments, why didn't we ask about suicide? Now, hindsight 2020, God forbid something would happen to someone, then we're looking back saying, I wish I would have.
Right.
But in those moments when we're all dealing with the day-to-day difficulties of adulthood or, being a teenager, parenthood, whatever it may be, why in those moments are we hesitant to ask, right?
Yeah.
And so we need to become more comfortable with being uncomfortable, because that uncomfortability can and it will save someone's life.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's always harder to do the right thing and the harder thing, for sure.
Yeah. So you guys did mention, both of you mentioned trainings. I know we have mandatory trainings, but could you tell us just a little bit of the trainings that you guys offer here at Fort Hood?
Yes. We offer a wide variety of trainings. We teach a lot of the soldiers here on the installation in reference to suicide prevention and awareness. And with that, it's basically going over the risk factors, the warning signs associated with suicide. We also do the same thing with civilians. They're required to get 1 hour of suicide prevention training annually. And even the newly hired DA civilians that come onto the installation, we catch them as soon as they come on. Another thing that we do is we reach out to the schools that are in the local area.
Oh, okay.
We try to get into the middle schools, the high schools, to try to teach them about suicide prevention and awareness. Where can the kids go to if they're feeling that they may have thoughts of suicide or be at risk of suicide? And then what do they do if their friend may be in the same boat? Who do they turn to? The coaches, the professionals in the school, the directors, and things of that nature. And so the training aspect is really trying to get individuals to understand that the more we get it out there, the more we talk about it, the more you become more aware, you may be able to help that person because of what you learned in our trainings.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know you guys do like unit specific trainings as well. Could you talk a little bit about how, if somebody is interested in doing that, how they could go setting that up?
Yeah, so of course they can contact our office. We're available via phone, email. You can even send a bird with a message. We'll try to catch it, right? And so, like Kenya said, like it's really important to just carve out the time for individuals of all ranks, for civilians, for family members. So we can really get comfortable with talking about suicide, because we're not doing that. And so we found that people really have grown to value the small discussion type trainings where we create a non-judgmental space.
Yes.
Where, no question is I'm using quotes for those of you out there who are listening, is a dumb question. We welcome all feedback, even if it is opposing what, we're bringing to the table and what we're trying to, increase awareness on, right? So we offer the 60 to 90 minute trainings for the units. We've done training specifically for senior leadership on both the enlisted and the officer side. We're in the schools, like Kenya said. We have done the applied suicide intervention skills training. The Army is now has revamped the ASCARE escort suicide intervention training. So we talk about the ACE, the ASCARE escort. And so we're welcome to talk to any of the target populations that we serve, because we know it's important and everyone needs something maybe a little bit different. So if it's just the regular, the ABCs of suicide prevention, yes, we, would love to come and increase the awareness that way, to do refreshers. If it's like an FRG group who they need help learning how to talk to their kids, or, just getting more comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You know, we would love to come in and do that. So it's just a simple, send us an email, give us a call. We'll coordinate our schedules, and then, you know, we'll make time, because, you know, people are the most important thing. So
Yeah, absolutely. We got to
Yeah.
start having the conversation. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And, you know, to get a hold of us, my office number, 254-287-0640. Once again, 254-287-0640. Give us a call if you want to set up any type of training, but we would like to put out a disclaimer. Our office number is not a hotline. In the past, we have received a lot of calls saying the individuals were at risk, and believe me, we will go into action and help individuals if we have to, but we are so busy. There are only 3 of us on the installation, and with everything that we do, oftentimes we are not in the office, so we don't want our office number to be a hotline, because we don't want to miss that call when we're not there.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So we encourage everyone to call the National Suicide Prevention Hotline, which is 1-800-273-TALK, 1-800-273-TALK, or if it's that much of an emergency, if you want to call 911, those are 2 numbers where individuals are guaranteed to answer.
I also forgot to mention, and Kenya, this is something that's new, that for the soldiers who are listening, can I get a hua? So we will be offering training at the People First Center. That's a new initiative here on the installation. We're looking forward to doing, you know, that targeted 90-minute training, as well as vignettes that are being acted out by actors, and engaging with the service members in that way too. So please look forward to that.
Yeah, and I think we've participated in a number of those so far. I want to say we probably have about 300 individuals that have been trained since we started.
Wow.
And the difference in that is that it's smaller, it's more in your face. It gives everyone an opportunity to be able to interact. And so you learn the skill one day, and then the next day you're able to apply it in a small group format. So it's very up close, it's very personal, but it makes people feel comfortable enough that if I can do that here in this setting, I can probably take it away and do it if I have to do it in real life as well.
Yeah,
It's really impactful.
I know that would be helpful for a lot of people to see it, learn it, and then actually use it before they walk away. So make sure it sinks in with them. They have that skill forever. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. Well, do you guys have any final thoughts? Anything else you need to share?
Yes. So
I love when we have a yes to that answer. To that
I
question.
often have these like great ideas, right? And so late last night, I text messaged my team, and I was like, guys, can we do a 3-way call? And of course it was too late. So I was like, just remind me of a company run in the morning, right? And so I thought about comparing suicide prevention to a company run, right? And relaying the fact that it's important, like in a company run, everyone is there. It's not just the lower enlisted, it's not just the leaders, it's everyone in formation, right? Yeah. And so for suicide prevention, we need everyone on board. We need everyone in that formation, everyone committed to being there, right? And being willing to ask the difficult question and be there for themselves and for others, right? And what happens when you're in that formation and you have those, you know, when I was in the military, it was like A group, B group, C group.
Yeah, the same.
And so, right, what happens when you fall out of formation? Somebody
will
somebody falls out with you, right? And so if you're climbing up that hill of life and you happen to, you know, fall out of formation because you're struggling getting up the hill, somebody else falls out. And they are there with you. They are your pacer. They're making sure that you're not alone. Yeah. And they're not going to say, okay, you know, see you later. When you catch up with the group, you catch up with the group. No, I see you. I acknowledge that you need some help. I get out. It's my responsibility to make sure you're okay. And so it's the same thing with suicide prevention, right? Yeah. Everyone struggles. Sometimes those events that we all go through are more painful for other people, and that's okay, right?
Yeah.
So the thing is that when you need to fall out, you know, we need to do a better job and just make sure that we're seeing people, regardless of what you're going through, regardless of how you take it. It's not a weakness. It's a strength that you're looking to get help, to better yourself, to better, you know, this company, to better this unit, to better this army. And so, you know, just let's fall out. Let's get these people taken care of. Let's ask them what they need to feel whole, to address those issues that they are having. And, you know, don't leave them and say, okay, I'll see you when you get back in formation. No, let me wait here with you and let us go back to formation together. Yeah. And that kind of ties into the 2021 DOD theme for this year. Kenya, do you want to share that?
And that's connect to protect. Help is within reach. We have to understand that when we are helping individuals, you know, most of the time the resources are right there. We just don't always know it.
Yeah, they
and so to kind of caveat off of what my coworker was saying, we have to let individuals know it's okay to not be okay.
Yeah,
we can't expect that every day of the year we're going to be perfectly fine. The sun is always out. There's going to be some rain this there. There may be some floods, but we have to find that resiliency, and we have to be that resiliency oftentimes for other individuals to say, I'm here with you. If it's flooding right now, I'm standing right here with you in the rain. Let me pop an umbrella for you. Let's get you to a dry place, if you will. And I think individuals, if they can realize that we are all human beings first, with that whole People's First initiative, when it comes to suicide, that should be the first thing that we're looking at. It's not about a soldier. Before that soldier came in the military, they were a human being. Yeah. Before you became a Department of the Army civilian, you were a human being. And so I think we miss that human being aspect sometimes to say, it's not a soldier that's having the problem. This is a human being. What can we do from a human being aspect to help this person save their life?
And that's even more important when you think about who exactly needs help. So if it's your supervisor who is experiencing a death in the family and they're grieving, if it's someone higher up the chain, if it's someone lower in the chain, it doesn't matter. Like Kenya said, we're all humans, right?
Yeah.
So no one is without trials. No one is without struggles. And so we all need to recognize that one day is going to be our day when we're not doing so well. And that's okay, right? How do we deal with those struggles? Because as humans, we're not without them. So
I like that.
Yeah, that was a beautiful sentiment, and I think a great way to end our interview today. So I want to say thank you guys so much for coming on the podcast with us today.
We appreciate you having us.
Thank you very much.
Flash floods in central Texas happen within only a few hours of rain. Every year, more than 80% of flood fatalities involve vehicles, and about 10 people drown in their vehicles each year in Texas. Vehicles of every size can lose control, float, and roll over in flood conditions. Is taking the risk worth it? Is it worth the risk of leaving loved ones behind? Overconfidence kills. Don't drive through floodwater. It's not worth it.
All right, so we have a very special guest with us today, and it is Chaplain Carron Jones. Thank you for coming.
Hey, glad to be here.
Great. And we are here to talk about another heavy topic as well. This week is going to be heavier than normal, but we wanted to discuss the United States departure from Afghanistan and just talk about how that's affecting our service members and veterans behaviorally and mentally, physically. So in your own words, ma'am, can you tell me your point of view about the withdrawal of troops from Afghanistan?
Well, I think anybody who's been watching television or scanning through social media or anything in the news lately, it's been a little bit overwhelming. The images, the narrative, all of it has been a little, it's been a little hard to take in.
Yeah, very disappointing in some regards.
Well, I think you're right, and I think as a chaplain, I put it in terms of something a little bit different. I put it in terms of a grief. Mm-hmm. And you might say, well, why is it grief? Well, for those who have deployed, for those who've walked the ground of Afghanistan, who've interacted with the people of Afghanistan, who've been there with their unit, there's a grief that sits heavy on your heart, right?
Yes.
And what do you think about that? What do you say about that? What is this grief thing? Well, you only grieve for things that matter to you, for people who matter to you. You know, there's actually a book entitled The Unwanted Gift of Grief. And in that book it says, you know, you don't grieve for people you don't know. When you read the newspaper and you look at the obituaries, you don't grieve for people you've never met, for those you've never had a life experience with. You grieve for those who you've had the opportunity to spend time with, to get to know them, to walk beside them, to share life with them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think there's a grief that sits heavy on our heart because we have walked with the people of Afghanistan.
Yes.
So you think in terms of leaders like me. I came into the Army in 1996 as an enlisted member, and then in 1999 I became a chaplain. So basically my entire career has been somehow connected with the global war on terror,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so if you've been following this journey all throughout your career, and you've interacted with these people and you've walked the soil, and you know, I can still tell you about the people I met in Salerno, the people I met in Jalalabad, the people I met in Kabul. I can tell you about my interpreter.
Yeah.
And what a dear friend she was to me. And so there's a grief because we've invested ourselves in these people and in this land and in this mission. And we do that because we're soldiers, right? That's what we've committed to.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think about the lessons learned from Afghanistan, and I think about the soldiers who I prepared to deploy, and you know, we prepared to redeploy, and we prepared to reintegrate, and then we prepared to do it all over again and again and again. You know, I think about soldiers, and what just blows me away is they truly get service.
Mm-hmm.
They truly get service. They truly understand duty. You know, I think about terms such as embrace the suck.
Yeah.
Soldiers,
Common phrase.
Soldiers just get it.
Yeah.
And they're willing to do it. And so they invest themselves totally and completely in whatever the nation asks us to do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, soldiers go forth on behalf of the nation, in defense of the nation, and they serve according to our nation's values. You know, and it's all about to preserve and protect this Constitution, right? I'm just blown away at the level of commitment and duty and honor that service members have displayed over the course of the 20 years that I've been involved with the global war on terror.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a grief because we've been passionate about it. We've been all in.
Yeah,
right?
a lot of time and resources and money was put into the mission. So what would you say to the soldiers who feel like it was all for nothing, or who are struggling with their sense of purpose and what they did over there? And even, you know, when you don't have to go to Afghanistan to be invested in the war, because even if you're on the rear detachment, and that's a group of soldiers that don't deploy, even though your unit goes forward,
Right.
Because they still are serving the mission. They have to take up, those soldiers have to take up the absence of the soldiers that are forward.
Or even your family members who
Yes.
sacrificed.
Mm-hmm. So
There's
it's
so many people affected, not just those who physically went to Afghanistan.
Yes.
Right.
And what would you say to those soldiers and family members that are asking themselves why, or feeling like it was all for nothing?
That's a powerful question. I mean, especially when we think in terms of our Gold Star families.
Mm-hmm.
There's a quote that I read this week by David French that just sums it up perfectly for me. He says, "The purpose of sacrifice is not transactional. In other words, a sacrifice does not become worth it only if that sacrifice yields immediate, tangible returns. with greater returns necessary to justify greater sacrifice. Instead, virtuous sacrifice is transcendent. Not transactional, it's transcendent. It's an expression of duty and faith that has enduring power, and that power is often not fully perceived within our lifetime. I read that and it just blew me away that this one quote could so summarize the struggle, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is it transactional? Does our sacrifice matter if everything turns out as we wish it would? Or is our sacrifice transcendent? Right? I think David French nails it in that one quote. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I mean, it's still hard for me to wrap my head around it because I also deployed to Afghanistan a while ago. Do you mean transcendent as in it goes beyond what you see in your lifetime?
I think it does. I think when I see children getting onto an aircraft and they're going to come to the United States, they would never have had that opportunity had we not been there.
That's a good point.
And that opportunity to live in a democracy, to get an education, to understand what it means to experience full freedom, I think that's kind of a transcendent aspect. And our duty and our sacrifice and our investment, you know, it's kind of like planting a tree, but you may not ever see that tree fully grow and eat the fruit.
Mm-hmm. So you're saying even though we can't see it right in front of us, we don't know what's to come.
I think some beautiful things are going to come out of this.
I hope so. I've been having a hard time, honestly, myself. I, like many others, did not expect the Taliban to take all of that back so quickly. Like it was so hard to watch all of it, you know, and I personally know people that gave their life in the war and who are affected. If those of us that came back. So, sorry, it just really hits me.
You're good. I understand. I feel like a lot of us are feeling that lately. I know my stepfather went to Afghanistan. He's no longer with us. So I feel like a lot of people, especially with those who are no longer here, that's where it hits the most.
Yeah. There's a term called moral anguish, that there's a struggle internally, kind of like a knot in your gut, that you're not sure what to do with what you've seen and what you've experienced, and there's a pain there. And I think that comes back to that grieving process. We grieve for those we've lost. We grieve for the impact on our Gold Star families, right? So where do we look for hope? Right? Where do we look for hope? Where do we look for grace? Where do we look for encouragement? And I think that's a challenge to us as soldiers, right? Because it's about duty, it's about sacrifice, it's about understanding that we don't do policy. We don't make those types of decisions. We do what we're asked to do on behalf of our nation, and we do it willingly. And we fight for that man or woman on our left or our right.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard because I remember every time I went on a death notification. I remember every time I stood at a graveside. It's hard. That's moral anguish.
Yes, especially with the recent terror attack that took place at the Kabul airport. My news feed and everything has just been flooded with all of the names and the images, and it's just been a trial. So what kind of tips do you have for us to, what we can do to just maybe not feel alone or struggle in silence, and what kind of resources are available on the chaplain side of things?
Well, I know you're going to mention the connections that we can reach out to for counseling or for behavioral health or things like that, or the nurses line or the veterans crisis line. But let me offer to you something that I found useful, because chaplains can get in a funk too, right?
Yes, we're all human.
Right, right. And so one of the things that I've tried to put in place in visualizing what I do and what soldiers do, if we see the human continuum of behavior, there's evil and there's good, right? There's terrible things that we experience, and there's some really beautiful, awesome things. So there's just this continuum of things we see and experience. I think chaplains get a full dose of both the good and the evil, right? We're with soldiers in the very worst parts of their time and life and marriage and family, and sometimes we get to be there in the very best times of their lives and their service and their family. Just an example from Afghanistan, I got to climb to the top of an OP, an observation point in Salerno, and I got to do a re-enlistment ceremony for a soldier on top of a mountain in Afghanistan. How cool is that, right?
That's awesome.
And then we smoked cigars. But there's always this spectrum of good and evil. But I've had to think about what are some protective factors that I can put into my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I have offered these to soldiers, and I think they connect a little bit. So I'll tell you, there's 4 of them, and I'll just name them, and then I'll kind of explain them just a little bit to you. The first one is gratitude. The second one is community. The third one is creativity. And the fourth one is silence. So I think about gratitude. I remember being deployed to a variety of places, and I think one of the things that always occurred to me when I got off the plane and I was back in the United States, I always just wanted to kiss the ground and say, oh, I'm so glad I'm home, right?
Yes, and taking the air.
Yes, so glad I'm home. Mm-hmm. And I think of gratitude, it's this feeling of thankfulness of, man, I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful that I don't have to walk 150 yards to go use a porta potty. I'm so glad that I'm inside my house and I can use the nice facilities. Or I'm so glad that I can go to the refrigerator and get something to eat. I don't have to walk all the way down to the chow hall. There's just little things that we can be grateful for. Yeah. Sometimes in the middle of the night when that baby is crying and you can't get them to fall back to sleep, and you're so tired, and you've tried everything you know to do to comfort that little child. Sometimes you just have to hold this little person and say, God, thank you for allowing me to be a parent. I'm so grateful that I get to be a parent to this.
Doing that a lot lately.
Yeah.
So the thing about gratitude, if you're practicing gratitude, it's almost impossible to be angry and grateful at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
It's impossible to be depressed and grateful at the same time, right? There's something about the practice of gratitude that pushes out those negative emotions. Man, I'm so grateful I get to be married to my husband, and I'm so grateful that I've got kids and grandkids now that I can watch them learn how to swim or learn how to ride a bike. But the practice of gratitude is something so simple, and you can journal or you can just talk, out loud and share your gratitude with somebody. But the second one is community. Human beings we were just designed for connection. We need each other. The African term Ubuntu, I am a part of you, you are a part of me. We are connected at our deepest parts. We need community. So whether it's your guys you go to the CrossFit box with, right? or the folks you play golf with, or maybe it's the ones in the yoga room with you. You know, maybe it's the guys or girls that you go hunting or fishing with.
Mm-hmm.
But we need community. Perhaps your community is at the synagogue. Perhaps your community is at the mosque, or maybe you're, in the Mass, in the celebration of the Mass. Perhaps your community is the church and some Bible study group or prayer group that you participate with. But we need community. When we get in isolation, things get dark, and we kind of experience that dark night of the soul sometimes. When we get bombarded with all the stuff in the news and the social media and all that.
It's really easy to get and spiral, especially with all the intake of information age that we're in.
I love Anne Lamott. She's got this great quote. She says, "My mind is a dangerous neighborhood, and I don't like to go there by myself."
I like that quote.
Yeah.
That's a nice
Oh
quote.
my gosh.
That's way too true.
Not to
My
mention,
mind is a dangerous neighborhood. I don't
Not-
like to go there.
not to mention, community means that you have more people to talk to, and I feel like talking is one of the most important parts, like what we're doing right now, actually.
Mm-hmm.
So it's that realization of shared struggle, right?
Mm-hmm.
So even as we've been talking, we're like, man, did that impact you? Did it impact you? Yeah, we're just like, wow. I did not enjoy seeing that or experiencing that or hearing about that. It's through listening to one another, through empathetic listening. So listening for not just the words, but listening to the emotion, listening to the heart. That's what we get in community, right?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we get encouragement. Sometimes we get to laugh together, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we realize we're not alone on this journey. I think community is really cool. I think we need it. The third one is creativity. So I don't know what you're into. Maybe you're into woodwork, or you do cross stitch, or you do ceramics, or maybe you build a boat, or maybe you build motorcycles, or you build computers, or whatever. But we need creativity. My creativity is in the kitchen. My kitchen is like my art, my playroom, where I just go in there and I just start mixing and doing, and I love to create food. You're like, so what's the deal with creativity? Creativity calls for imagination, right? Creativity helps us with hope. It gives us the chance to see that out of this part or this piece, something new can be born. We can take something old and make it new. We can repurpose something, right?
Mm-hmm.
So things can be transformed through creativity. An old broken down boat can become a beautiful vessel sailing across the ocean. I don't know. There's something beautiful about creativity that gives me hope and inspiration. I think we need creative outlets, right? So we need to inspire or encourage soldiers to find something that they can be creative with, that they can use your imagination and invest themselves into.
Channel all that energy and negative thoughts and create
Mm-hmm.
something beautiful out of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And the fourth one is silence.
The silence. Yeah. This is the hard one. So, you get in your car, and what's the first thing you do? You turn on your radio.
That's right.
Right? Or you get home, you turn on the TV, or you've got something playing on your phone or
Like
whatever.
Fort Hood's Great Big Podcast.
Yeah.
For his great big podcast, or the Joe Rogan podcast, or somebody's
Right.
podcast, right? But turning off our phone, turning off our television, turning off all the devices, and just experiencing silence. It's really weird to admit that we're uncomfortable with silence.
Oh, it's not weird. I think it's very normal.
We're uncomfortable with silence, right? And so, what if you could just sit on your back porch or sit on your balcony or just listen to the breeze. Listen to the breeze, duh. Listen to the silence and feel the breeze. Or to be out in a boat and just see the stillness of the water and cast, or to sit in a tree stand, you know, like you're hunting for deer, and just listen to nature. You know, to me, silence gives me that opportunity to calm my mind, to breathe in calm, and to exhale anxiety. I desperately need that, right? So silence is it's uncomfortable, but I think if we're willing to lean into the discomfort, as Pima Chodron says, lean into the discomfort of it, and learn how to breathe, and just rest and relax and calm our mind, and let all that anxiety just kind of fade away. I don't know, there's something refreshing there.
I like that quote, breathe in the calm, exhale the anxiety.
Yeah.
I feel like something that a lot of us need right now.
Yeah. You know, silence is good, and getting away from all the barrage of news and social media. Sometimes you just got to turn off CNN and turn off, you know, all the news providers. You just
Unplug.
Unplug, exactly, right?
Yeah.
So think about gratitude, expressing gratitude to one another, to your fellow soldiers, to your parents, to your children. You know, sometimes I just look at my dog and say, I'm so glad you're in my life. We need gratitude, right? We need community. We need somebody to walk beside us. We need meaning and purpose, belonging and connection. And we can find that in the context of community.
Mm-hmm.
We need creativity to see something come out of nothing, or to see something repurposed, because from imagination, hope can be born, right?
Yes.
And then we need some silence, just every now and then, just a little bit of silence.
Mm-hmm.
We just got to get away from it all, turn it all off, to just rest and relax. And these, to me, are the 4 protective factors that I use, kind of like my guardrails to keep me out of the ditch.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I love being a soldier. I love being with soldiers, because that's what I've done for almost 25 years. October will be 25 years.
Wow.
In the Army.
I think that's older than you, right, Pearl?
Oh, yes, it's older than me. 21.
Yeah, my daughter's older than you.
I think those are really good points. I do have a question. You mentioned earlier the gift of grief. I feel like that phrase is almost an oxymoron, but it's interesting. I wanted you to elaborate on that a little more.
So when I think of people who've passed in my life, I'm so grateful that I had the opportunity to know them. I'm so grateful that I had the opportunity to share life with them. And that anguish and those tears, that lament, that crying out, it's the heart's expression of love for having had the opportunity to know that person, to share life with that person. Pretty heavy. But you think about the people who've been in your life, and aren't you glad you had the opportunity to know them? And that grief is the heart's expression of love and thankfulness for having known them.
This is very beautiful. I'm totally not crying right now.
It's kind of how we can process it and think through it and work through it and say, God, thanks for letting this person be in my life. You know, both my parents are passed. My husband's parents are passed. And we miss them terribly. But we think about all the things they taught us and all the things we experienced with them. And man, we're so grateful that we had the opportunity to know them.
This is a very powerful quote.
So it helps me, and I hope it helps others as they think about.
Yes. Well, I know you've seen a lot and done a lot and experienced a lot of negative emotions, especially you've been in so long and as a chaplain. And I know that you've helped a lot of people, and I think you're going to help more people today with with this podcast?
I'm old. You could say it. I'm old.
I don't think that's where she was going there.
No.
You got to throw in the humor, right?
Right? Yeah. I think that's an important part
Yeah.
too, is knowing what you can control and accepting what you can't.
You know, I love to read Viktor Frankl's works, Man's Search for Significance. And he gives us this powerful insight. He said, when I was there in Auschwitz, I came to realize that the one freedom they could not take from me was my attitude. I could choose my attitude. And he said, I decided to think about my future self. He said, I began to visualize myself 5 years in the future. And I'm a professor teaching college. And I'm telling my students about this experience. As a Holocaust survivor, he's teaching his students about what he went through and what he learned from that. And he said, the ability to see myself in the future and to reflect on my lessons learned sustained me in the concentration camp. And it gave me a reason to fight, to continue wanting to live every day. I wonder, do we see ourselves in the future, and what have we learned, and how will we use that to help other people in the future? I think it's a powerful concept. I'm every day I'm trying to journal. What have I learned today, and what can I share with others in the future in whatever I'm doing after the Army? I don't know. Maybe there's something there.
Yeah. But there's always someplace you can turn to.
Absolutely.
And just want to mention that if you are struggling and you feel down, just know that you're not alone. There's counselors, there's chaplains, there's so many people, that friends, family, loved ones, that you can turn to for help, and that you are not alone. So, do you have any last thoughts, Pearl?
I was just going to say, if you cannot find someone in person to speak to, please feel free to call the Military Crisis Line at 1-800-273-TALK. That was 1-800-273-TALK. There's also Military One Source, 1-800-342-9647, 1-800-342-9647, and the TRICARE Nurse Advice Line, 1-800-874-2273.
And for the Military Crisis Line, that is 24/7, and so is the TRICARE Nurse Advice Line.
And chaplains are 24/7, right?
Yes, chaplains at all times.
We are 24/7.
Well, thank you so much, ma'am, for coming and giving us your wealth, many years of knowledge.
I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Save money and get special military discounted tickets to your favorite attractions like Six Flags, Schlitterbahn, SeaWorld, Disney World, and more. Stop by our Leisure Travel Services office located right here on post to get those tickets. For more information, go to our website at hood.armymwr.com. Have fun!
Wow, that was really powerful. I'm so glad we were able to talk to her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really liked, I feel like chaplains always have a very unique perspective, and they're really good with explaining how you can see things in a different way.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Having kind of like a, that's the way I would explain it too,
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah.
They're really good at communicating difficult topics
Yes.
in a good way.
Yeah, navigating
Yes.
it and breaking it down and allowing you to see it in another way.
Yeah. Have your feelings, but also understand kind of everything that goes along with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The bigger picture.
Yes.
Yeah, we're fortunate to have so many resources
Yeah,
available.
we are. Fort Hood really is setting you guys up.
Yeah. You're never alone.
That's right.
Very important to remember.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's it for this week. So we want to thank everybody who is listening. We appreciate you, and we will talk to you guys next week.
Bye.
This podcast is a U.S. Army Garrison Fort Hood and Fort Hood Public Affairs production. The show's theme music is written and produced by Delicious Allstars. All our music is obtained through Filter by Songtrader. Have a question or want to share some insights with us? Email us at forthoodpao@gmail.com. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at USAG Fort Hood. And as always, be sure to leave a review and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.